Hello, good afternoon. I'm Bea Copin, and you're watching Rappler. A little over a month from now, a new set of lawmakers will be taking their oaths as members of the 18th Congress. The May 2019 election saw administration bets dominate the senatorial, congressional, and key local races. The dominance even crossed over into the party list race with the 18th Congress as the setting for new groups, many of them explicitly allied with the current administration, and some of them allied with traditional politicians. So what's next for the opposition and progressive groups in the Philippines? We're joined today by Akbayan Representative Tom Villarin, hopefully to help us make sense of what happened and what this means going forward in Philippine politics. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Bea. Well, I think the 2019 elections, specific to the party list, was really a major shift in terms of the nature and composition of the party list. Although it started in 2013 when the Supreme Court decided to do away with the marginalized and underrepresented provision in our party list law, meaning that it's only based on proportionality. Then we have new entrants, not from the sectors, but from big business, contractors group, and clans, political clans at the local level. So in a way, the competition under the party list system of representation is now mainly about money, power, and influence, rather than on sectoral advocacies. Now, if we look at the data of the results in the 2019 elections, of the 43 million votes cast for the elections, only 27 million votes went to the party list. So it's around 60% of votes cast for the party list. And well, one thing happened is that, again, this is also the first time that a big number of incumbent party lists were not voted. Around, I think, 22. So 17 incumbent party lists lost their seat, and there are 5 other party list groups that have 2 seats and only got 1. So this is, I think, a major happening. I mean, what's happening in the party list is there was really a change of who entered the system. So, and if you look at the 21 new party list groups, again, you could say these are dominated by interest groups who also happen to benefit from the Build program, the infrastructure-driven program of government. And if you look at who lost, of course, Akbayan, we had 430,000 votes that we lost. But there are also other sectoral groups that lost as much as 1 million votes.
The overall volume for the usual parties that you see in the party list.
I think it's only one party list got more votes than in the 2016 elections. The rest of the 44 party list groups, practically all our votes went down. And there are also reports that in some precincts that we got 0 votes, which is very surprising considering that we have members in those areas. And we also have our so-called bailiwicks. We have local candidates who won, and we only got 1,000 votes. Supposedly, if you compare it in the past election, there could have been more. So, and one thing that's also striking in the party list results is the number 1 vote getter, the party list, got 10% of the total party list votes. It's the highest that any party list got ever since the party list election started in '98. While the rest has to distribute among themselves less than 1 million votes. So So what happened? So what we're looking into is, of course, there could be external factors like, of course, the elections was really heavy on well, there was reports of massive vote buying, then reports also from our locals that Akbayan was also lumped as part of the red groups na, and it even came out in some news media wherein our campaign materials were said to be in the camps of the NPA.
Right, right.
Thirdly, we also have local allies, no?
Yeah.
Local government officials, from mayors down to councilors, who were asked, no, not to vote for anti-Duterte
Right.
party list group. So these are the external factors. But again, internally, I'm talking based on my own experience, because we still have to have an assessment this middle of June.
Yeah.
So this is not the official statement, but
Right, right.
based on my observations, no, I think, again, as I've said, the party list terrain has dramatically changed.
Right.
And for us to win at least one seat,
Right.
you need to spend millions, no? Because
Which was not the norm before?
it's not the norm before, because
Right.
you just rely on your electoral base,
Yes.
then your support groups.
Of course.
Mainly because new party list groups, no, have conditioned, no, voters that in the
This is
party
the
list
new
elections,
norm.
the new
Yeah.
norm is there's really a transactional
Right.
element in voting for the party list.
Right.
No?
Right.
But again, as I've said, even in vote buying, you could only do much. No?
Right.
You cannot buy the whole voting or
Right.
the electorate in one community. So
Right.
again, the challenge, because many people see party list groups now as, or even the party list system as not an exciting arena because it's now dominated. So I think many also did not vote for the party list, mainly because of that
Nawalan din
conception.
ng pag-asa at gana, ganon?
Yeah, no, parang na-demonize din, no, yung party list. No? So, but again, as I've said, it's the double-based party list groups that were really highlighted and supported by the administration, and they won convincingly, no, if you talk about numbers. No? So again, it's in terms of cost, it's highly expensive, no? Because right now, in order for you to have a statistical chance also of winning, it's not just your mass base, no? But you also need to convince voters of your advocacies, and in order for you to reach out to them, you need to have political ads. No? And we did not do that. No?
Because those are expensive.
Precisely. No? And well, if ever we do have the resources, perhaps it's also incumbent upon us to also do that, to reach
Right.
to a
Of course.
greater number of voters. Because when we started the campaign, we did a survey, and the survey shows that there's still a lot to believe in us. But
Right.
when the campaign started, you have
The
to remind
money
them.
starts pouring in.
Yeah, money starts pouring in,
Yeah.
and the ground operation started.
Yeah.
You have to remind the voters that
Right.
you're still campaigning, or you're
Right,
still
you're
part
there,
of the
yeah.
rano. So we were deluded into the sense that no, our base might suffice. No?
Right.
But again, as I've said, the low turnout, which also affected us and
Yeah.
other party list groups, many did not anticipate. The also the manner of the ballot wherein the party
Yeah.
list vote was on the reverse
Some
side.
people might have
So,
forgotten
yeah,
to
many
vote
people.
for, yeah.
So there was no information drive on
Yeah.
that. But again, as I've said, there are external factors, there are internal factors to
Right.
consider, and we have to contend with new terrain for the party list. So the question really is it still relevant the party list
Or is it
system.
so true to its
Yeah, to its
original?
nature and
Yeah.
form. So we have to push
Yeah.
for a reform in the
Right.
party list
Right.
law, meaning we have to go back to its real intent, that of the party list as sort of a social justice
Right.
mechanism, which
Yeah.
the Supreme Court, in a way, dispensed
Yeah.
with. No? So, if we would craft a new law, again, putting in more teeth to it being an affirmative action
Yeah.
for the marginalized, for the voiceless. Secondly, we also have to address the system of proportionality. In order for groups to come together, you have to
Right.
take away the 3-seat cap, and other things that
Right.
needs to be reformed.
Right.
Complementary to the party list law,
Right.
you have to have an anti-political dynasty law.
Right. Because we're seeing a lot of familiar names.
Yes, so
Familiar family names,
Family
usually
names.
the children of
yes,
people in big business, people in traditional traditional family names in politics.
yes, we have to put that into the anti-political dynasty law. You also need to reform our political institutions, especially on political parties.
Right.
If we really want to have strong political parties, it should have programmatic, programmatic approaches to politics, and we don't allow shifting from one parties to
That's
other.
so much easier than said, sir, though. But I'm just wondering, because in the 17th Congress, medyo napansin na nga natin na maraming groups who won seats in Congress from the party list race. You know, like you mentioned, businesses, not exactly the usual, group that represents the marginalized. Did you see this coming na ganito kabilis yung progression na by the 2019 elections, the progressive groups find it hard to secure seats, save for one or two?
Yeah. Well, we were, again, after the 2016 election, we were worried about
Okay.
the party list totally will be taken over by this business rules. But in terms of the turnout, and in terms of looking at who participated, there was really a conscious big effort on the part of the administration to really put in their own party list groups. So
To put effort in endorsing
yes,
these groups?
endorsing this.
Of course.
Even the president was seen in many political ads
Right.
of many party lists,
Right.
endorsing the
Right.
party list.
Right.
So in a way, that also spelled the difference. No?
Right.
Some of the party list groups, like the Makabayan Black, held their ground, but they
Pero
lost
overall volume
almost,
ata, sir,
yes,
bumagsak pa rin yung vote.
yes, I
yung
think
votes
they
for
lost
them.
1.6
Yeah.
million votes.
Yeah,
in
that's
total.
quite a
Yes,
dip also for the bloc.
It's a big dip. No?
Right.
And also for other non-ideological party list
Yeah.
groups, but have sectoral
right.
bases. No? Like
Right.
I think Agri party list was in the
Oh,
rural
yeah,
area. They lost
yeah,
2
yeah.
seats.
Yeah.
And of course, Butil party list, really with the farmers group. And I think another one, Angkla, was with the seafarers group.
That's right.
Also lost a lot of votes compared to 2016.
Right.
So many are asking,
Yeah.
what
yeah.
really happened?
Yeah, medyo din talaga siya. Paradigm shift, not just for Akbayan, and not just for the Makabayan bloc, but for a lot of
A lot of
party list groups. No?
party list group with strong sectoral constituencies.
Right. Sir, factor din kaya for you, because Akbayan, obviously, in this administration is clearly in the opposition. Did that factor into you? Aside from, you mentioned earlier, may red tagging na nagaganap in certain areas. Right, it's very black and white now, di ba? Parang kung opposition ka, parang kalaban ka na. May ganong connotation minsan. Did you think that actually lost you votes?
Well, I think partly, we don't say that it's wholly being opposition,
Yeah.
because in our campaign in this 2019 elections, we did a positive campaign, no? Meaning our messaging was really on Akbayan's track record, having passed more than 70 laws, especially in the 17th Congress. We fought, no, as a fiscalizing opposition. So meaning that positive campaign is that we did good legislation while being in the position. But again, perhaps the message could not get through because the veneer of negativity is too thick
Right.
for us to penetrate the message to the people. No? And of course, the culture that President Duterte has already spawned, meaning fear, culture of fear, and also the culture that anything that is who is not with him is against him, and therefore the bad guys, no, has permeated, no, the voters' consciousness. No? Plus the fact that, of course, there were really targeted efforts, no, directed in many of our areas, especially in the rural areas, that cost us our votes. But for me, I think we also have to reimagine, no, how to approach campaign strategies. No? Because as you know, these elections, there were even innovations on how to do vote buying. Some did pyramiding scheme
You recruit people?
to recruit
Parang
voters.
Ganon? Oh, okay.
Have them invest in some sort of an enterprise investment with returns as high as 40%. But that's good for 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
Then you capture. So it's a
Yeah.
household investment scheme approach. So even the
Maraming factor.
because now it's automation. So it's really how can you hold on to the voters? No?
Right.
So if the traditional way of doing it is just to buy their votes on election day or 2 days, right now it goes way beyond. No? Before the election day, as early as the first day of campaign, you already secured their votes. No? So
in a perverse way, it sparked
in a perverse
innovation.
way.
Yeah.
So we have to look at that and how to address it. And of course, the thing right now is the question is there was too much money flowing, no, into the elections. Even party list groups, the top 10, had
Was
political
that surprising
ads.
to you, sir? Because I'm sure you saw that as the campaign progressed. You saw the money flowing, or you
Yes.
heard reports of that. Was that a shocker to you in the party?
It's a shocker in the sense that these are new groups and they could spend so much, no, even reaching as high as 500 million pesos. They're even outspending a senatorial campaign. No? So the question is, where are these funds coming in? No? So again, that's also the question: where does the money flow? No? So
it has to come from somewhere.
it has to come from somewhere. No?
Right.
So in the end, it's really. I think for the next elections, you have to contend with perhaps what we would be seeing is that the party list seats would just be a one-seat affair. No, you could not imagine getting 3 seats, no, without spending 3 times or 5 times as much as you spend for 1 seat. No?
Right.
So that's why, because of that, there are many groups participating because they think that
Nagiging money game na siya.
it's a money game and you have to have a secured area, a bailiwick, no, that you can capture and just
at
live
least
with.
secure one seat. At the
to at
very
least secure
least.
one.
Yeah.
So it has become a one-seat race, no, for the party list, and it has and it's proven of the past 2 elections.
Sir, ano implications nun? Okay, I just want to jump ahead. I actually have another question, but I just want to jump ahead. The implications of that system that you're describing to me, na, even in the party list system, it's money that you observed really, changed the game, I guess. What does that imply for the 18th Congress?
Well, I think for the 18th Congress, of course, these moneyed interest groups now would try to regain or recoup their so-called investments now. So we could see more of the transactional type of politics now in Congress, and right now we're seeing that in the speakership race. No? And even former Speaker Alvarez said that in order for one to win the speakership race, you have to spend $1 million or perhaps more than that to get the support of legislators. So the messaging right now is really everything is transactional. So again, that does not bode well for our democracy because while our economy is in a way growing, our economy is doing good, but our political institutions, our systems are becoming more immature. No? We're moving back. No? And there's also no checks and balance.
Right,
no?
right. But sir, a skeptic might say, di ba ganun naman talaga yung kalakaran ng Kongreso? Pero parang, I mean, di ba, if thinking as a skeptic, someone who's disillusioned towards Philippine politics maybe.
Well, before there are bottom lines, I mean, there are sort of rules. No? I mean, not all laws or even advocacies have to pass without changing. Now it's really, I mean,
It's become
free
almost a
for all.
norm.
No? It's becoming a norm, and again the revelation that even the speakership, because before it's just
It's a numbers game, right?
It's a numbers game, but
Finding allies,
when someone says that he would be the next speaker because he's close to the president, then that's it. No?
Right.
Or among political parties, there would be talks about alliances. No, it's just personalities. No? People contending. So before there were discussions among the different political parties, no? But now it's just personalities vying for the post.
Right. I have to ask also, sir, because the 17th Congress wasn't easy for the opposition at all, especially in the House of Representatives. You were obviously outnumbered. Supermajority lang naman yung kalaban nyo. And I mean, in a lot of committees, kunwari, parang you really feel that the opposition or what little of the opposition was left in committees would be eased out or like not be given a chance to speak, literally sometimes. So, what does this mean about Philippine politics? Like, is there even space for an opposition in this administration?
Right now, I think we have 17 legislators who won us under the Liberal Party. No? And I think there are 20 plus in NP or other NUP groups. No? Because usually it's the administration party that gets all the members. No? Now for LP, I think this is the chance to offer like some sort of an alternative, and decide that it has to go minority. So again, the question of who will...
Another very contentious point from the 17th Congress, yes.
Well, the 17th Congress, President Duterte just won the elections. Now, it's in the midterm. After the midterm, then you have to look at the bigger picture 2022. The big challenge is, of course, who will lead the LP charge in the House. Without then former Speaker Belmonte, then I think the big task is now given to Congressman Kit Belmonte. And I think he can do a good job leading the LP contingent in the House. You also have Congressman Edsel Lagman, who's a veteran legislator. So you have, then of course, you have Congressman Bordado, who are in themselves very strong leaders. So if LP can lead the opposition, fiscalizing opposition, that would be good for us. So again, the burden, the mantle now is on LP. But LP has to go beyond LP identified with former President Aquino, or LP being the Marro has LP, no?
Yeah.
It has to develop and project new leaders. It has to address, the needs at the local level. Local progressive politicians. LP can convince or entice them to become part of a new politics, no, so to
Right.
speak.
Right. Let's talk naman, sir, about the future of progressive groups in the Philippines, because like you mentioned nga, although the Makabayan bloc, some of one group won 3 seats this time, pero parang ang dami ding nabawasan ng seat, ang dami hindi nakapasok at all. What does this mean for progressive politics in the Philippines? Like you said, there's so many things stacked up against you. The shift in how the party list system works, the elections in the party list system work, and then also, of course, you mentioned also red tagging, and then, how the president is very expressive about how he does not like the opposition, right? So ano ang scenario for progressive politics in the Philippines?
Well, I think the future of progressive politics in the Philippines rests with the youth, no? With our young generation.
Pressure. So no pressure for walang pressure sa future sa younger members of the progressive
I
groups.
think, and when you talk about politics, no, it goes beyond. Of course, we are consistent with the issue of class struggles, consistent with the issues of the poor, deprived, and the oppressed. No? But the progressive left, no, would have to deal, no, with issues on identity politics. Would have to deal with issues on climate change, and would have to deal, no, with platforms that would entice innovators. Social entrepreneurs, no? and come up with a comprehensive, no, platform that would still be based on the issues that all boils down to inequality. No?
Right.
So you have to connect inequality with the struggle of identity politics. You have to connect inequality with the struggle of farmers who would suffer because of the neoliberal system, which are also now being capitalized upon, no, by rightist groups. So when you talk about the left, we should go beyond, no, the issues or the causes espoused, no, 50 years ago, and have to deal it, no, squarely in terms of also for the young generation.
Yeah.
Because surprisingly, the young generation did not participate, no, in this 2019 elections. No? So
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
There was a low turnout. No?
Yeah. Why is that, you think?
I think the young generation, many are pragmatic. They want to talk about the future and how to deal with the future in a pragmatic way, you know, like finding jobs and jobs that would also address, you know, their way of life. It's in a way, no, it's not just confined to a work-home balance, no, but also of a social life. But at the same time, many of them are fearful about the future.
Okay.
So, like my daughter, she said that, will I get a college education if 20 years from now we don't have a world to live by because of climate change? These are the issues that they're facing. I mean, there's that uncertainty brought about by the realization that even if they say we do some things, small things that also make a difference, but overall, these are being negated, no, by what's happening now. You have Trump in the U.S., the results of the
global
elections.
shift in politics,
yes,
right?
a global shift.
Yeah.
So there's also that pessimism, no, among the young, and we have to confront that. We have to make them understand that their role really is also with this generation.
But how do you do that? So yun nga, kasi parang it's a globalized, also localized anxiety of a generation, which I understand. Like for millennials, the Gen Zers, how do you address that? Especially because like your generation is parang you have to be preparing the succeeding ones, right? To take over your mantle one day.
Well, the only way is really to expose them, no, about the realities also on the ground,
Yeah.
and for them to appreciate and understand it. So, it's important that the millennials, the Z generation, need to have also a grasp, no, of the realities, and they also have to understand that the older generation, no, while they may have committed lapses or wrongs, no,
Yeah.
we have to do it together.
Right.
So,
It can't be just like
yeah, it can't
may
just be
kasalanan
them
ka.
and
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it's really this generational shift should be done, no, by both, no, generation, the older generation and the younger but we also have to appreciate, no, why there's pessimism, why there's in a way pragmatism on their part. No. We don't say they're doing it the wrong way. No.
Parang
We
corny,
need to,
OA.
yes.
Yeah, you can't dismiss it.
Yeah, we can dismiss it. No. We have to
Of course.
understand, appreciate. No. And it's a long, arduous task, but again, it's the only way. No. I mean,
It has to be done.
it has to be done.
For, 2022 is bukas na yan. Ang
Yes.
lapit na rin ang
And,
next election.
and I think there are a lot of inroads, no, especially with social media. And again, we have communities, no, who are also willing to teach, no, the young generation about what's happening in an indigenous people's community, what are their perceptions, their culture, and how they view things. No? Also, in communities that are being deprived of their rights. But we don't sort of just teach them or indoctrinate them
Yeah.
about these issues or this fixed mind. I mean, our viewpoints about these issues.
Yeah.
So it's really unlearning also for the older generation. You have to
It's a two-way
unlearn,
thing. Yeah.
unlearn what you have been doing,
Yeah. Because it's
and learn from the young.
Yeah,
also.
it's a different world that these generations have grown up in,
Yes.
right? So I also have to ask you, sir, because again, 17th Congress is about to end, 18th is about to begin. The last 3 terms of 3 years of Duterte's term, a lot of key legislation hindi na matatapos ng 17th. But in an 18th, that's dominated by a super, I don't know what to call them anyway, super majority, right? What things must we monitor? Because of course, there's charter change na hindi na natuloy under this Congress. So,
I think charter change would
Yeah.
still be a major policy agenda. Forget about federalism. It's
you
just
think there's no...
yeah. I think federalism, because right now even the administration cannot agree.
Yeah, that's right,
So-
that's right. Even in
so
the
it's-
cabinet, some
yes,
of them...
and it's futile to push for federalism.
Okay, I see.
There are many versions out there.
Right.
No
Right.
one is
and
talking.
there were 3 years Congress had 3 years to figure out, but it still
Yeah.
didn't figure out what form to
Yes,
take,
and our economic managers, Duterte's economic
Yeah.
managers, are still also not
right? They're not
solved
so,
on that.
yeah.
So it boils down to charter change. So the main agenda for our charter change is really continuity. So it's mostly lifting of term limits, and of course, you could have a shift to a French model. I think that was the president's speech in his
Yes.
first SONA.
Yes.
He wants a French model, and that's
Yeah.
a presidential parliamentary
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
And perhaps reducing the administrative regions, they could have regional governors to run administrative regions, but again, under a strong national government. So perhaps when the president said in his first SONA that he wants a French model, maybe this would happen here, no?
Yeah.
In the 18th Congress. No? So that's not federalism. No?
Right. Right.
And I think if that happens, then this regime would continue, whoever becomes the president. I mean, this viewpoint, this mindset that law and order becomes the primary and only governmental function. You do away with welfare, you do away with social protection, then I think we would again go back to the problem of deepening inequality. And of course, that won't solve the long-running insurgency. That won't solve, again, the question in the Bangsamoro. Because another shift, a political shift, you would again set aside the BARM,
Yeah.
meaning your political agenda is no longer focused on making the BARMM work
Yeah.
as a model for, say, self-determination or even autonomy for that matter.
Right.
So there would be consequences of move for charter change. And well, the economy will still, because under a neoliberal capitalist system, it's no matter who handles it, an authoritarian, an autocrat, or an illiberal democratic regime, it would still prosper. So that's the danger of this political shift that might happen, most likely to happen under this second
The 18th
term of
Congress.
Duterte.
Yeah, because you have to remember that the Senate is also now very much dominated by allies and hand-picked candidates who won in the last election. So
Yeah,
it's
so
going to be a very interesting 18, to say the least.
Yes, and even in the Senate or
Yeah.
allies, it's just a question of whom they say that Malacanang gets Malacanang support. No?
Right.
So again, in the end, even in the Senate, it will be a race for the presidency to get the
Right.
support of the president.
Right.
So you have two chambers that would really have super majorities. No?
On that very bleak note, no, I'm kidding. For Akbayan naman, sir, moving forward, I'm sure you'll be spending the next weeks, months, maybe reassessing and moving forward, understanding what went wrong, what happened. Of course, last week, a former Akbayan representative, former Akbayan member, Walden Bello, his theory was that not just for Akbayan but also for the Makabayan bloc, na the alliances that the parties made was also a factor in I guess the disillusionment of a lot of the groups that once supported them. Would you agree with that idea?
Well, I think if you go into alliances, there would be advantages and disadvantages.
Of course.
No? It's just that, of course, if we look at the disadvantages what we're talking about, in terms of setting the agenda, we did made inroads during the past administration. It's just that from out of nowhere, someone comes from out of nowhere and becomes the president, who really changed the landscape.
Yeah.
And considering also that majority of Filipinos whom we thought had in a way have experienced martial law and are not inclined to support again any strongman rule, fully supported him. So I think the challenge here for all the progressive groups is that in building alliances and looking for what should be in store for the future, we really have to reimagine and rethink. Meaning we have to put up a new deal, so to speak, from the progressives, from cause-oriented groups, even from the liberals. No?
Yeah.
But again, we don't expect that LP will be that lead party anymore. We have to come up with a new electoral alliance. No? And that electoral alliance should be as broad as possible.
Right. Right.
And I think even with the dominant left, no, I mean the traditional left, they should also open up, no, to a genuine alliance work
Right.
with other groups.
Right.
Not always saying that they are doing the right thing or
Right.
they are the ones who should lead
Right. Right.
the left, but they also have to come to that realization. But doing that is easy
Easier
to
said
and done.
Yeah.
So again, these are challenges na being brought forward to us in the progressive movement.
Right.
But for Akbayan, we're confident that come 2022, the party can rebound. We have strong territorial constituencies. We have won in local elections. And we have reached out to allies at the local level, which still support our principles, our advocacies. And we could start from that.
Yeah.
And especially too that for Akbayan, like in 2016, like the labor sector was not with us. But right now, 2019, one of our big campaigners on the ground was really from the unions and from the sectors.
Right.
And also from the peasant groups.
Yeah.
We got the support of
Right.
3 big peasant federations.
Right.
But again, of course, translating sectoral constituencies, doubling it, making it threefold in terms of outputs
Yeah.
is a challenge not just of machinery but also of logistics.
Right.
So again,
Yeah.
we have to prepare. For
Right.
me, it's a matter of preparing for the next round of elections
Yeah.
and effectively communicating
Right.
our New Deal, our
Right.
program, comprehensive program to the
Right.
people. And I think another thing that we should not do again is really go for a tit for tat under this Duterte regime. Because in a tit for tat game, again, it's always the paradigm of Duterte that I mean, we have to do things that would put him on the spot and say that things should be discussed on this manner.
Right.
So being a fiscalizing opposition means that we have to communicate that we are doing things good for everybody,
Right.
good for the administration.
And not just for the sake of being the opposition.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's what we failed to communicate in these 2019 elections. So going to 2022, we don't go tit for tat.
Yeah.
We have to make our own narrative with the public. And I think, like for example, VP Lenny, I think the Laylayan program, she should let the sectors speak for themselves,
Right.
rather the vice president speaking for those who are in the Laylayan.
Right.
And I think it's also good for the vice president to engage the middle forces, the middle class, on what they think should be a new approach other than law and order,
Right.
so to speak.
Because that's the dominant mindset right
that's
now.
the dominant narrative that Duterte has put. I mean, you don't attack the law and order and say it's useless. But what else do we need as a middle class? And connecting that with the issue of inequality, poverty. So that I think should be also the role of the VP. Give the laylayan to to the sectors.
Right.
They can speak for themselves.
Right.
They should be empowered and develop new constituencies.
Right.
And I think the middle class also needs to always be made aware that besides law and order, there are also important things that they can contribute, no,
Yeah.
to the country.
Right. That's a lot of challenges leading up to 2022. Because, of
Yes.
course, preparations for 2022 should start now.
Yes.
It's not just campaigning,
Of course.
right? Of course. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Bea.
And making us make sense, helping us make sense of the coming 3 years in the 18th Congress. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us. This has been Bea Copin, and you're watching Rappler.